Talk college football right now with our good friend Brent Beaird of College Sports Today and First Coast News down in Jacksonville, Florida, fresh from the 2018 Heisman Trophy ceremony in New York City. We talked about it with Brent last week. Brent, of course, one of a couple of Heisman Trophy voters we have on the program on a fairly regular basis. Brent couldn't reveal his Heisman Trophy ballot in advance of Saturday night's show. But now we get to find out exactly the way Brent Beaird put the names down on that ballot. Brent, welcome to the show.
Trav, good to be with you. Tua was number one, and number two was Kyler Murray, and three was Dwayne Haskins. I still am scratching my head as to how people with a Heisman vote, 40 of them can leave Tua off, 27 of them can leave Kyler Murray off. Look, I don't have a problem if you want to put a Will Greer or Gardner Minshew or Mackenzie Milton, someone like that on there, but to leave the top two vote getters and to leave the two best finalists off, Trav, I really wonder at that point if the people who do that need to actually have a vote in the future.
Well, with great appreciation for the lines of scrimmage, as I have and I talk about consistently on the program, which means I love me some Quinnen Williams. I love me some guys like Josh Allen of Kentucky, and in most years would not have any question about anyone who put a Quinnen Williams in their top three or a Josh Allen even in their top three. I don't know how you could leave any of the three guys off that were the three finalists. You voted it exactly the same way Cecil Hurt did. We had Cecil on yesterday, and his 1, 2, 3 were just like yours. Yeah, that's a head scratcher. How you could leave, especially Tua and Kyler Murray off your ballot altogether. Do you think there was some SEC fatigue, maybe Alabama fatigue specifically, involved in some of this?
Well, yeah, I think there probably were. I don't think you can deny that, frankly. Yes, I think it was, and I think the other thing that surprised me a little bit is to me this is a season-long award. This is not a championship week award, as some people looked at it. So that's the thing that I didn't get either is why Tua did not get more credit for what he did throughout the year instead of just in one game. So I think that had a lot to do with the two. And I mean, Trav, to me that's what it is. It's to borrow the basketball phrase, it's your entire body of work, not just one weekend.
Yeah, I think if you were a voter and you were looking for a reason not to vote for Tua, then you put everything on championship, conference championship Saturday. That's the only way you can really explain it. And again, that's understanding that both Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins had very worthy resumes. That's not to say that either weren't worthy of winning the awards themselves. I just do think there were more than a couple voters out there that all they needed was a sliver of daylight to sort of work with in making that decision to go elsewhere from Tua with their first place vote. Hey, Brent, we're still a couple weeks away from really the SEC teams getting bowl action cranked up. I mean, we're talking about a 4 or 5 day sort of period in which 11 SEC teams, you talk about SEC fatigue. If you don't already have it, between December the 27th and January 1st, you're likely to have an acute case of the fatigue, right?
Well, and the thing that's funny about the bowls, I mean, it basically starts Saturday and then continues on Tuesday. We have a different bowl about every other day, but you're right. I mean, it seems like it's forever before the league really starts playing their games at this point. So yeah, I certainly get that too. And and I'm sure you've looked over this like I have, Trav. And again, I don't think the bowls are the end all do all for how you judge a conference, but I could see the conference doing very well in the bowls, couldn't you?
I could, although Vegas, when you look at it in terms of favorites, Mississippi State's favored over Iowa, Texas A&M favored over NC State, Missouri an 8-point pick right now over Oklahoma State, Florida an underdog to Michigan. But when you look at sort of the centerpiece games, which obviously is going to be very much around that Orange Bowl matchup of Oklahoma and Alabama. Alabama a 14-point favorite still in that game, and then the New Year's Six game, the Sugar Bowl, Georgia an 11.5-point pick over Texas. And so when you talk about bowl matchups for the SEC in terms of most winnable to least winnable, you know, which of these games do you think the SEC is most likely to win? And maybe looking at it right now, do you think this SEC team's going to be at a pretty good disadvantage?
Can Kentucky beat Penn State? I mean, I think they can, but I think I think a lot of that depends on their mental approach to this, and I think the mental approach, Trav, will have everything to do with that Georgia-Texas game. I mean, can Georgia win that game? Absolutely. Do they have a better roster? Yeah, I think they do. But again, it depends how much of a hangover that they have got in that game too. And then you've got like Florida and Michigan. Florida certainly needing to win that game and exercise some of that Michigan hex, and you probably saw this day too. I found it interesting, like I did. Don Brown, the Michigan D coordinator, he interviewed for that Temple job. Not saying he's going to get it, but let's just say that he did. That would be very interesting to see how that would affect that game.
Yeah, I think Walt Harris at this point is interviewed at Temple. It seems like really? Everybody else has. So why not Walt? So let me ask you this. You know, when you hear talk like we did this morning from The Athletic, Nicole Auerbach reporting that important ADs, Brent, presidents and commissioners are pushing for an 8-team playoff ASAP. I read that to mean Jim Delaney, commissioner of the Big Ten, and if UCF's AD and president are considered important, they're a part of that as well. I know you're a proponent for expanding the field. I'm so on it. I don't want to see it get any bigger than 8 myself. But why are we hearing that talk? Is it because of the Big Ten's absence the last couple of years, and maybe more so money? I mean, big dollars on the table here, right?
Yeah, that will always be the case. Now I'm with you. I don't want to see it get any bigger than 8 either. We've talked on and off before about some people wanting 16. I don't see that. I think if you go to 16, it almost gets to the point of being ridiculous there. But I think 8 would work, and the reason I've been always for 8 is that you get all these conferences represented. Now, what to me, Trav, what's different about this is, and you hit on it, it's the Big Ten talking about it. Barry Alvarez, Gordon G, guys like that. When you've got some of these influential ADs and presidents talking, that brings it in a different perspective when that is going on. So, and I think the other thing is they know they're missing out on some of that money. They're tired of not being in it, and I think they're beginning to realize. And you've got some of these other commissioners, the Pac-12, need to do the same thing, and Bowlesby too, but. I also thought it was pretty interesting. We could do this. Not only could we do it, we could do it by 2020. So I'm always amused, Trav, when that Big Ten gets ready to do something, how they can accelerated pretty quickly.
Yeah, it seems like Jim's able to get things done pretty quick.
Absolutely.
But the Big Ten, they got a ticket through the back door a couple of years ago. Ohio State didn't win a division, didn't win a conference title, still got in and got rolled. Got rolled by Clemson.
Yeah.
So you had your shot. Alabama got its opportunity last year, ended up winning the whole thing as a 4 seed. I think there's a lot of SEC envy here, and it definitely includes the checkbook, where at last check, Forbes, I believe, according to its numbers, the SEC was $100 million a year ahead of the Big Ten and everyone else in terms of revenue. So that will definitely help spearhead some movement as well. Hey, this UCF perspective, I thought it was interesting last week down in your neck of the woods. Scott Strickland, the AD at Florida, publicly offered a 2-for-1 between the Gators and UCF. That means 2 home games in Gainesville, 1 in Orlando. And UCF AD, Danny White, didn't seem all that receptive to it, I guess.
Well, the interesting thing about that is I would agree with what Tony Barnhart wrote about that last week. He said if you're Danny White, the AD at UCF, yeah, you complain about it, but you take it in a heartbeat. So, of course, they're playing them anyway twice in Gainesville and also in Tampa. So that's something I think could get done fairly quickly along that line. But I also get it. I mean, if you're UCF, unless the Big 12 brings you in or someone like that, your quickest way to challenge for the playoff would be expansion and or scheduling enough teams to where, like Bobby Bowden did years ago, to where you could get in from that.
I think UCF actually is playing this perfectly, selling wolf tickets from the gallery, basically, about what it would do, about what it could do. But then when given the opportunity on a public format like it was provided in the past week, going to we're a top 10 program. We don't have to take those type of deals. Well, you've been a top 10 program the last 2 years, Dan. This is certainly not something that's been year in and year out. And look, UCF's had a nice couple of years. But I think that's the way they ought to play it, is sell the wolf tickets, put national championships up, claim them from wherever you want, and then actually don't engage with some of these offers. Hey, on the SEC level, Brent talked about this earlier in the show, not obviously as much head coaching movement this year after a year in which there was a lot, but at the coordinator level, right? I mean, seeing a ton of it most recently. Ole Miss, dismissing Wesley McGriff as defensive coordinator, bringing in Mike McIntyre, the recently fired Colorado head coach, kind of a trade for the SEC with Mel Tucker going out to Boulder from Georgia. Phil Longo, we find out in the last day or so, the Rebels offensive coordinator's leaving Oxford to go to UNC with Mac Brown. Kind of a carousel, I guess, at the coordinator level in the SEC right now, including right here in Alabama.
Tennessee still trying to find their offensive coordinator. FSU, outside the SEC, is doing the same thing. Kendall Briles has been mentioned. Larry Fedora. Now, Trav, I mentioned that Temple job a few minutes ago, and the reason that's important here is Miami's Manny Diaz. Maybe the best coach on that staff right now is interviewed for Temple. That's a guy they really need to stay, I think, at Miami. And by the way, I thought it was huge. I know you've been out there lately. Mike Elko now staying at A&M. He was rumored for that A&M job too. So, Trav, how much of this is these guys can make it almost as much money by staying as they could being a head coach at some of these other places?
In the same number of years. I mean, these coordinators now. Yeah. Mike McIntyre getting 1.5 a year for 3 years at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
At Ole Miss, he's getting that. So it kind of just speaks to the the coordinator bubble, maybe we ought to refer to it as in the coming years. But here in Tuscaloosa, reports in the last day or so, Mike Locksley obviously moving on to Maryland. I've been asked about it with the expectation that Dan Enos will be elevated from quarterbacks coach to coordinator. Will there be changes in the approach? And I think 12 years into this regime of Nick Saban, I think we understand that if there are adjustments and or changes made to philosophy or scheme in any aspect of this Alabama program, it's going to come from the head coach, right?
Yeah. I don't think there's any question about that. And of course, Butch Jones moving on to Maryland. So, and I can understand it. Some of these guys trying to reinvent themselves, and I give Enos a lot of credit. It's obvious he's done a really good job with these quarterbacks, and obviously you could see it in the SEC championship game with the job that he's done with the Jalen Hurts. But look, Alabama fans can be guaranteed one thing: whoever they lose, Saban will bring in someone who can first of all recruit and B, develop players. So there's never a real concern about that issue.
There isn't, and Nick always refers to it as our offense.
That's right.
You don't ever hear him refer to it as Mike's offense or Brian's offense or Jim's offense. It's our offense, as he likes to refer to it.
And I think it's pretty obvious, Trev, with this group he brought in, that he wanted that. He never will come out and say it, but he was unhappy with that recruiting finish last year. So I think they've upped the ante and done a little bit better this year and already started for 2022, right?
Yeah, he hit the refresh button on that recruiting staff. And, Josh Gaddis, a big part of that too. And a guy as the wide receivers coach, you're hearing him linked to some head coaching jobs, Appalachian State, and some other places as well. So could be another offseason of some transition for Nick when it comes to his assistants. Hey, Brent, as always, appreciate you joining us here on the program. When we talk next week, we'll be a week closer to SEC bowl and college football playoff action. You look forward to that, I know.
I do. That'll be a lot of fun, and we'll start previewing some bowls next week, and Trav, hopefully that I'm sure that as we expect Santa to come down the chimney, does that mean Pops is behaving a little bit better, knowing Santa's coming soon?
I don't think that alters Pops' behavior one bit, unfortunately, Brent. I hate to report that, but I do know that Nana keeps him busy with putting lights up, getting that tree up, doing a lot of things around 6047 Mizell Drive there in the wilds of the west side, Jacksonville, Florida. So she maintains a structure for him that I think keeps him in the line as much as one could hope. That's all we can really say about that.
So like kind of the structure Nick Saban has for his staff and players, something like that, right?
Yeah, it's a process. It's very much a process with Pops. He doesn't need a fourth quarter program. He needs an eighth quarter program. Is what Pops
that's good.
He needs 2 games. All right, Brent, as always, enjoyed it.
Me too, bud. Take care. Talk to you soon.